The alarms began softly at first. A low humming sound inside the dark metal walls of Outpost Zatnine, buried deep in the blackness of space. The alien operators, cold-blooded and disciplined, barely looked up at first. For centuries, this listening post had detected small signals, meteor strikes, lost ships, harmless noise. But tonight was different. The alarm grew louder, sharper, filling every corner of the outpost with an urgent pulse that made even the most experienced soldiers shift uncomfortably in their seats. One operator, young and inexperienced, stared at his glowing screen with wide, unblinking eyes. His claws trembled as he leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. Unidentified ship. It's entering restricted space. The others gathered around him in silence, their faces drawn tight with confusion and a hint of fear. The Empire ruled this part of space. No ship, no species dared to cross these borders. But something was here now, something alive, something moving. The command center of the outpost filled with tension as senior officers stepped forward. The screen displayed a single object, dark, sharp, gliding through the void like a silent predator. Its shape was unfamiliar, but its energy readings were unmistakable. It was a warship. The outpost commander's voice cracked as he spoke. Identify the species. Now, room scanners worked furiously, processing the strange readings, searching through vast alien databases, and then the result came in a simple word blinking in blood-red letters across the screen. The room fell deadly silent. The word was clear, sharp, and terrifying. Human. No one moved. No one spoke.
Ow.
The youngest officer stepped back as if the word itself was poison.
S.
They had heard the rumors. Yes, whispers passed from Star System 2. Star System of a race from a distant death world. A species that fought wars not for glory, not for territory, but because it was all they knew. A race so dangerous that even the great empires of the galaxy chose to avoid them. And now, of their ships was here. The commander's voice dropped to a whisper. Contact Central Command. Send everything we have. Can't allow it to pass. But deep inside, even as he gave the order, he felt the cold weight of fear settling in his bones. He had never seen humans, had never fought them. But he had heard enough to know, once they arrived, blood always followed, out in the black. The human warship moved without sound, without light. Its engines burned cold and sharp, its hull scarred from battles far away. But it was not slowing. It was not. Turning, it was crossing into Empire space without hesitation, without fear. Its message was clear. Though no words were spoken, it was coming as Empire ships scrambled to intercept. The first wave of sleek alien fighters streaked through the void, weapons hot, engines burning. The command center of Outpost Zatnine watched, breathlessly, the screen showing the tiny dots of their proud warships racing toward the human vessel. The operators leaned forward, eyes locked on the unfolding scene. Then the human ship fired in less than 8 seconds. 3 alien ships vanished from the screen, torn apart by weapons too fast, too precise to counter. The command center exploded. Into chaos, officers shouted. Orders flew. More ships launched in desperation, but it didn't matter. The human ship moved through them like a predator among helpless prey. Every attempt to strike it failed, every missile missed. Every beam of energy was dodged or deflected. Alien ships burned one after another, silent explosions lighting the dark sky. In the outpost, the young operator fell to his knees, his eyes wide, his voice shaking. We can't stop it, he whispered. We can't. The commander, his hands trembling, forced his voice to stay steady. Send the signal, he ordered. Full Empire alert. We need reinforcements. Now. But as the message sped through the deep void, carried on ancient relay stations toward the heart of the Empire, the human ship kept moving silent, unstoppable, cold as death. Hours later, across the shining capital worlds of the alien empire, the alarm signal reached high command. Inside glittering towers of glass and steel, the Empire's rulers gathered, their faces pale, their voices uncertain, maps lit up with red warnings. Defense ministers barked orders. Fleets were mobilized. But beneath the sharp words and flashing lights, one truth settled over every heart. This was not just another border skirmish. This was something else, something worse. The humans had crossed into their territory, and they were not turning back. In orbit over the burning debris of the first battle, the alien survivors drifted silently in escape pods, their faces frozen in terror. One soldier, covered in blood, whispered to no one as his life pod spun through space, "We shot first. We shouldn't have. We made a mistake." In the distance, the human ship continued forward, engines glowing faintly like cold embers. In the night, no message came. No demand for surrender. It simply moved, hunting something unseen. Driven by a purpose no alien could understand. Back in the shattered command center of Zatnine, the young operator sat alone, the others dead or fleeing. The walls were cracked. Smoke filled the air. His screen still glowed, still showing the single terrifying word, human. And as the last alarms echoed through the dark corridors, he realized with cold, perfect clarity that this was only the beginning. Nightmare had arrived, and there was no stopping it now. The Empire's war fleet gathered in silence, their engines burning softly against the endless black of space. Ship after ship slid into positions like destroyers, heavy cruisers, armored carriers, each one built for domination. Across the vast command decks, alien officers stood still, their hands cold, eyes locked on the same glowing image that haunted every screen. The human warship, alone, unafraid, still moving deeper into their territory. For centuries, the Empire had ruled this corner of the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions, wiped out lesser species, and burned countless worlds into submission.
Ow.
They had grown so used to victory that the idea of fear had become distant, something buried in the past. Something they couldn't explain. Because this enemy, this lone human ship, did not act like any threat they had faced before. In the command center of the flagship Valor's Fist, High Commander Reshkel bared his sharp teeth, his voice cold as ice. "We gave them a warning. We told them to turn back. They refused." His gaze narrowed on the screen. "We'll show them the power of the Empire." Round him, his officers nodded, their hands moving across holographic controls. Weapons armed, shields raised. Hundreds of ships locked onto the single human vessel. The fleet stretched like a wall across the stars. Victory seemed certain. Overwhelming force had always been the way of the Empire. And then, without warning, the human ship fired. The first shot came without sound. A lance of blinding energy streaked across the darkness and struck the Empire's lead cruiser. In an instant, the alien vessel exploded, its core ignited. Flames and debris spun into space. The second shot came half a heartbeat. Later, another ship gone. The third shot, another flash of fire. Another lost life. The Empire's fleet shuddered. Confusion spread. Orders clashed over the comms. But the humans didn't hesitate. The lone human ship moved like a ghost between the burning wrecks. Its weapons precise, its engines silent. It didn't need numbers. It didn't need reinforcements. It was a predator in the Empire's proud. Fleet was nothing but prey. Panic gripped the alien officers. Reshkel's voice thundered across the chaos. "Close formation. Target engines. Bring them down." But it was too late. The human ship vanished from sensors, reappeared on the flank, and opened fire again. One more cruiser erupted into flame. Escape pods tumbled into the void, tiny white dots spinning helplessly in the cold dark. Survivors screamed through the comms, their voices filled with something Reshkel had not heard in 1,000 battles pure. Hopeless terror. And then came the worst moment. The Empire's elite strike team, 50 of their finest soldiers, boarded small attack shuttles. Their mission: breach the human ship, disable its systems, and capture it. They had done this before, countless times, against countless enemies. They were trained for every scenario, but not for this. The boarding shuttles vanished into the black. Docking with the human hull, time dragged on. Fleet waited. No communication came, no reports. Minutes passed. Then an image grainy, shaky flashed onto the Empire's command screens. One of the alien soldiers, his armor cracked, his breathing ragged, stared into his helmet camera. Behind him, shadows moved in the darkness. Human shapes, silent, waiting. The alien's voice trembled. We can't fight them. They don't stop. They're not afraid. The screen went dark. The last thing they heard was the sound of screaming. Reshkel's claws dug into the command chair. His officers looked at him with wide, frightened eyes. The truth was clear now. The stories had not been exaggerations. Ancient warnings about humanity, about the Death Worlders, had all been true. The humans did not fight like other species. They did not surrender. They did not show fear. They fought with a cold, unshakable fury that could not be measured or stopped. And their ship, this single human vessel, was not just a machine. It was a weapon of purpose. It moved not for conquest, not for territory. It moved because it was hunting something, and that something was them. The alien fleet began to break apart. Ships pulled back without orders. Some commanders whispered of retreat, others froze, unable to move. Reshkel roared in fury, ordering his forces to stand, to fight. But deep down, he knew. He saw the faces of his soldiers, how their hands shook, how their voices cracked. The Empire's finest warriors were afraid out in the void. The human ship kept advancing. It never stopped. It never spoke. It simply hunted aboard the human vessel. Hidden behind layers of dark armor and silence, human soldiers moved with grim determination. Their faces were scarred, their eyes burned with cold focus. They spoke no words of victory. They felt no joy. They were there to finish something. One soldier, her voice low and calm, whispered over the human comms. Contact made. Targets hostile. Mission continues. That was all. In the Empire's heart worlds, news of the battle reached distant command centers. Advisors gathered in secret chambers, their voices hushed, their faces pale. Panic spread faster than the truth. Some called for total war. Others whispered of evacuation. But one word echoed in every corridor, in every mind, carried on trembling lips: humans. The name alone was enough to freeze the blood. Back in the remains of the battlefield, the stars burned red from dying ships. The human warship drifted silently between the wrecks, untouched, cold. Waiting, it wasn't over. The first contact had been made, and it was only the beginning. The darkness stretched endlessly across space, broken only by the dying embers of wrecked alien ships still drifting, their twisted metal bodies glowing faintly in the void. The human warship moved slowly now, silent and cold, like a shadow gliding. Through the remains of a shattered battlefield, no distress signal came from it. No message. It did not explain itself. It did not stop. It only kept going deeper into Empire territory, like a creature following the scent of blood in the heart. Of the surviving alien fleet, fear gripped every mind. The once proud Empire, whose ships had dominated the stars, was no longer certain of victory. Officers shouted over tangled communications. Orders clashed, signals jammed. Every ship, soldiers whispered stories in hushed voices of human. Eyes glowing in the dark, of weapons too fast to see, of a species that fought beyond reason. Some of the younger troops trembled openly. Some begged for leave to return home. But the Empire's commanders gave no choice. Pride and power still held their broken ranks together. For now, High Commander Reshkel, his scaled face twisted in frustration, ordered a bold and desperate move: infiltration. If their ships could not destroy the human vessel, then they would take it from the inside. They would send their most elite forces aboard, cut out its heart, show the galaxy that the Empire still ruled by strength. From every corner of the fleet, the best soldiers were gathered, hand-picked veterans trained for every type of war. They wore the finest armor, wielded weapons capable of tearing through steel. They boarded small stealth shuttles, engines burning cold, and shot forward into the dark. Across the command decks of the fleet, alien officers watched with forced calm as the infiltration team moved closer to the silent human ship. No one spoke the fear they felt in their hearts. Inside the cramped dropships, the alien soldiers tightened the seals on their helmets. Their breathing was sharp, fast. Some whispered prayers in forgotten languages. But none of them had faced humans before. None of them knew what truly waited for them. The shuttles docked, the alien soldiers breached the hull, and then the silence began. One by one, command ships lost contact with the infiltration teams. First came static, then nothing. No reports, no return signals. Time dragged on. The alien commanders stared at blank screens, listening to dead channels, while the human warship remained still untouched, unmoving like a black wound in the stars. Finally, after endless minutes, a single transmission crackled through. A blurry, broken image filled the screen's one alien soldier, blood covering his armor, his voice shaking with pure horror. Behind him, the corridor of the human ship was dark, smeared with shadows, with shapes that moved unnaturally. The alien's voice cracked. We can't fight them," he gasped. "They don't stop." The transmission ended. Panic ripped through the fleet. Some ships began to pull away without orders. Some captains screamed over the comms, demanding to retreat. Others froze, their hands shaking as the images replayed in their minds. Reshkal slammed his fist into the command table, his voice a roar. "Stand your ground. We are the Empire." But his words felt hollow even to his own ears. Inside the human ship, the truth was far worse than the aliens could have imagined. The infiltration teams never stood a chance. The corridors of the human warship were cold and dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. The walls were scorched from old battles. Symbols of a language the aliens could not read were carved deep into the metal. But what terrified them most was the silence. The humans did not attack immediately. They let the aliens enter deeper, step by step, into a maze of twisted metal and shattered bulkheads. And then, like shadows slipping from the walls, the human soldiers appeared. They moved without sound. Their eyes glowed faintly behind battered helmets. Their armor was dented, scarred, but their movements were precise, cold, efficient. The aliens fired desperately, but the humans advanced without flinching, their weapons flashing once, twice each. Shot perfect. Each shot final. The alien soldiers screamed. They fled through the twisting corridors, but there was nowhere to run. One by one, they were hunted down in the darkness. Some were dragged into the shadows, their screams cut short. Some fired until their weapons were empty, only to be cut down by cold blades and silent hands. The last survivors, their minds broken by fear, sealed themselves inside a damaged chamber, their bodies shaking uncontrollably. One whispered through cracked lips, "They're not soldiers. They're something else." A slow, steady knock echoed on the locked door. 1, 2, 3. Then silence, and then nothing at all. Back in the Empire's fleet, the commanders watched in helpless silence. The human ship, still silent, still dark, began to move again, gliding past the burning wrecks, slipping through the Empire's defenses as if they didn't exist. No alien dared follow. No ship moved to intercept. Reshkal sat frozen, his breath shallow. His eyes stared through the glass of the command deck into the empty stars. Around him, his officers whispered in growing fear, "We can't stop them. They're not like us. They don't feel fear." The truth was spreading fast now, not just through the fleet, but across the Empire's worlds. The news moved faster than light, faster than reason. Every colony, every outpost, every city heard the same terrifying words. Humans had arrived, and no one, not even the Empire, could stop them. And yet the human ship kept going. It never slowed. It never spoke. It only moved deeper, carrying the shadows of the fallen, the screams of the lost, and the cold, unshakable silence of the unstoppable. The nightmare had only begun. The Empire's fleet was broken, but not yet destroyed. Across the black void of space, the survivors drifted in tight formations, their engines burning low, their weapons still hot. But behind every cautious breath, behind every sharp command, There was one thing they could not escape: fear. It clung to them, thick and cold, a weight pressing into every heart. They were the Empire's finest warriors, trained to crush rebellions, to burn worlds without mercy. Yet now, all of them, the soldiers, the admirals, the high commanders, felt the same terror growing in their bones. The human warship had vanished. No sensors could track it. No scans could find it. Unseen, a shadow among stars, waiting for its next strike. The Empire's proud ships, once symbols of absolute power, circled helplessly. Weapons locked onto empty space, nerves stretched to the breaking point. Every shadow, every flicker on a screen sent panic rippling through their ranks, because they knew now this was no ordinary enemy. In the flagship's command center, High Commander Reshkal paced like a trapped animal, his claws scraping across metal flooring. His face once cold and sharp was worn with sleepless hours. His eyes bloodshot, his breath shallow. He barked orders to his officers, demanding tighter formations, more patrols, stronger defenses. But none of it mattered. They couldn't fight what they couldn't see. "They're hunting us," one junior officer whispered, voice shaking. "They're toying with us," Reshkal snarled. "Silence. We are the Empire." But the words felt hollow, even to his own ears. No amount of pride could erase what they all knew. The human ship wasn't fleeing. It wasn't trying to escape. It was moving deeper, picking its targets, choosing its battles, and it was winning every single one. In the cold depths of space, another Empire cruiser exploded without warning. A flash of fire, a scream, then silence. The debris drifted like bones through the dark. There was no warning, no time to react, just destruction, just death. The survivors on nearby ships froze in terror, their hands trembling over useless controls. One whispered, "They're inside. They have to be inside." Paranoia spread like wildfire. Crews turned on each other. Every unexplained noise became a threat. Every dark corner became a hiding place for unseen monsters. Some captains ordered their own ships destroyed, choosing death over whatever horror the humans might bring. Others tried to run only to vanish without a trace. The human ship didn't need to be fast. It didn't need to be many. It only needed to wait, to strike, and to let fear do the rest. On distant Empire worlds, the panic grew worse. The news had spread far beyond the battlefield. Civilians whispered of deathworlders, of nightmare creatures that felt no pain, no mercy, no fear. Some worlds fell into chaos without a single shot fired. Cities locked themselves down. Entire planets cut communications, hoping to hide from an enemy that could not be stopped. Back on the broken front lines, Reshkal's mind twisted in desperation. He knew they could not win this way. They needed something more, something beyond. Numbers. His trembling hands activated a secret channel one he had sworn never to use. From the deepest chambers of the Empire's war vaults, a voice answered. Cold, mechanical, ancient. "What is your request, Commander?" The voice asked. Reshkal's voice was hoarse. "The humans have entered our space. I need the Obsidian Protocol." There was a long silence. Finally the voice responded. "Understood." Across the remaining ships, new orders came through, coded, sealed, unbreakable. The Empire would unleash its darkest weapons. Machines built for annihilation. Warships forbidden by ancient treaties. They would throw everything at the humans, no matter the cost. But even as the orders spread, even as monstrous new ships activated, deep beneath forgotten moons, the human warship struck again. This time it was not just a ship, it was an entire Empire station, a fortress built into a massive asteroid. Thousands of soldiers, millions of tons of steel, the pride of the outer colonies. Gone. No survivors. The explosion lit the black sky for hours. Empire fleets watched from a distance, helpless, paralyzed by fear. No one understood how. No one could explain it. But the message was clear. Nowhere was safe. Aboard the human vessel, the soldiers remained silent. Their faces were blank, their eyes cold. They moved with deadly precision, their mission unspoken but shared in every heartbeat. Finish the hunt. No surrender. No retreat. They had crossed into enemy space not for diplomacy, not for peace, but because something had been taken from them. Something that could only be answered by fire. One human soldier, sitting in the dim light of a control room, whispered quietly to herself, "They should have stayed away from Earth." The others nodded without words, back in the Empire. Fleet Reshkal stood motionless before the burning screens of the command center. His hands trembled. His breath came in short, shallow bursts. All around him, his people whispered, broken and terrified. "We can't win. They're not like us. They don't stop." He closed his eyes. The unseen war was not about weapons anymore. It was about survival. And the Empire once mighty was dying by inches, consumed not just by human guns, but by the cold. Slow poison of terror, the human ship moved deeper still, silent and unstoppable. The nightmare was far from over, and the unseen war had only just begun. The darkness stretched across the stars, wide and endless. As the shattered remains of the Empire's proud fleet drifted like broken bones through cold space, fires still burned on the twisted hulls of ruined ships. Floated silently, their lights flickering, their survivors too stunned to speak. In the heart of the blackness, the human warship glided slow, patient, untouched. It moved without sound, without fear. Like a predator that knew no rival, and the fear was everywhere now. The Empire's once mighty armada had become a ghost fleet. Every surviving ship carried not just weapons and soldiers, but whispers. Terrified. Whispers. Some spoke of the human ship as a myth, something impossible. Others spoke of demons from a cursed death world where only the strong survived. But the most terrifying words were spoken in quiet corners, in trembling voices. They're already inside. In command centers and dark corridors, alien soldiers checked their weapons again and again, jumping at every sound, every flicker of light. Some ships reported strange malfunctions, doors opening and closing by themselves, lights dying without reason, sensors showing movement where none existed. The soldiers could not explain it. The officers could not stop it. But one by one, the Empire's ships began to vanish without warning, without a trace. The human warship was not attacking in the way the Empire had prepared for. There were no grand battles, no mass assaults. Instead, the humans struck from shadows. Small teams of silent killers boarded Empire ships undetected, tearing through crews with brutal precision, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Others used sabotage, crippling engines, turning ships into drifting coffins. Some Empire captains destroyed their own vessels rather than face the horror that crept aboard in the dark in the fleet's center. High Commander Reshkal stood motionless. On the command deck of the flagship, his scaled hands clenched tight. His once proud voice was now thin and dry, barely more than a whisper. He had watched helplessly as one ship after another went dark, as entire squadrons vanished into the void. His officers no longer met his eyes. His soldiers spoke only in hushed, broken voices. Fear had taken them too. "Report," he rasped, though he already knew the answer. An officer, pale and trembling, barely looked up from his flickering screen. "Another cruiser gone, Commander. No distress signal. No survivors." Reshkal's breath shuddered. He turned his eyes to the endless black outside the viewing glass. Somewhere out there, the human ship was waiting, watching, hunting, he remembered. The stories from long ago, stories the Empire had mocked. Stories of a species born on a death world of fire and storms, a species that refused to kneel to any power, that fought until the last breath, until the last drop of blood. He remembered the old warning, spoken by the oldest veterans. "Do not awaken the humans. They will not stop." And now they had awoken them. In the distance, another flash lit the sky. Another Empire ship torn apart from within, burned like a dying sun. The ghost fleet drifted on, more fragile with each passing hour. Some alien captains abandoned their posts, their ships lost to mutiny or panic. Others destroyed their communications, sealing themselves off from the network. hoping in vain to hide from the relentless enemy that stalked them. Even the Empire's deepest protocols, its forbidden weapons, its monstrous war machines could not change what was happening. The humans were not fighting for conquest. They were fighting for something colder, something deeper, in the quiet. Corners of the flagship alien soldiers gathered in small circles, clutching weapons they no longer trusted to save them. One soldier, his voice no louder than a breath, said, "We should surrender. Whatever they want, we should give it to them." But the others only shook their heads. There would be no surrender. There would be no mercy, because the humans did not stop. Aboard the human warship, deep inside its armored heart, the soldiers of Earth moved without words. Their armor was scarred, their faces hard. They made no sound as they prepared the next strike. Each movement was calm, practiced, cold. They had been chosen for this mission not because of hatred, but because of something far more dangerous. The ability to endure, to hunt without mercy, to finish what was started. One soldier, her voice soft, checked her weapon and whispered to her team, "No survivors. No second chances." The others nodded. They remembered the fallen cities of Earth, the burned homes, the innocent lives taken when the Empire made its first attack. They remembered the faces of friends who would never return. And they knew this mission was not about territory. This was not about politics. It was about making sure the Empire would never raise its hand against humanity again. Back in the remains of the Empire fleet, High Commander Reshkal ordered what he knew was madness. He gathered the remaining ships, no matter how broken, no matter how few, and formed one last defense line near the edge of the Empire's core worlds. His voice shook as he gave the command, "Hold position. Prepare for final engagement." 8. Deep inside, he knew the war was already lost. The Ghost Fleet would not hold. The humans would come. And nothing, no technology, no firepower, could stop what was about to happen. In the silence of deep space, the human warship glided through the wreckage of another destroyed vessel. Its engines dim, its weapons hot. There were no words. Signals, only cold purpose. One by one, the lights of the Empire flickered and died. The Ghost Fleet was falling, and the humans were still not finished. The black sea of stars stretched silent and endless as the Empire's last hope, their greatest warship. Their pride stood alone in the void, surrounded by the broken wrecks of what had once been an invincible fleet. The Emperor's hand, a massive titan of metal and fire, bristled with weapons capable of reducing planets to ash. Its armor was thick, its shields unmatched, its crew hardened by wars fought across galaxies. Yet inside its vast steel heart, fear ran like cold water through every corridor. The humans were coming. Across the command deck, alien officers moved like shadows, their faces pale, their hands unsteady. High Commander Reshkal stood rigid at the center, his yellow eyes fixed on the flickering holomap that showed the empty darkness ahead. No human ship appeared, no signal came. Only silence, endless, suffocating silence. "We've lost contact." With the outer line, one officer whispered, barely able to speak the words, "No survivors." Reshkal said nothing. His mind, once sharp and commanding, was clouded by exhaustion, by dread. I had watched the Empire's grand fleet torn apart piece by piece. He had seen the best soldiers vanish without trace. And now every last hope rested on this ship. But deep down he knew the human warship would come. It would strike. And there was no force left in the Empire that could stop it. The Emperor's hand stood like a fortress in the dark, its turrets scanning every corner of the stars, its shields humming with lethal energy. All around it, the last fragments of the Empire's navy formed a broken shield, walled dozens of ships. Damaged, but still burning, still armed. Orders flashed across encrypted channels. Every gun was locked. Every soldier stood ready, and then, without warning, the first explosion lit the void. A distant Empire cruiser erupted into flames, its hull split wide, its engines dying in silence. There had been no warning, no incoming fire, just death. The command deck of the Emperor's hand froze. Where's the attacker? Reshkul barked, his voice shaking. "We can't find them," another officer cried. They're gone." Panic rippled through the fleet. Another ship exploded, then another. The human warship, silent, unseen, was moving like a shadow between them, destroying without mercy, without sound. The Empire's weapons fired wildly into the dark. Beams of energy lighting the empty black, hitting nothing. On the command deck, the horror was thick. One by one, the markers on the holomap blinked out, teach one another. Lost ship. Another crew gone without trace. The alien officers' hands trembled. Some stood frozen. Others whispered prayers to dead gods. "They're hunting us," someone breathed. "They're already inside the net." Reshkul's claws dug into the metal of his chair. "Activate the obsidian weapons." Now. Deep beneath the surface of the Emperor's hand, monstrous weapons powered up ancient, forbidden technologies sealed away for centuries, beams that could rip moons apart, missiles that burned stars, the full fury of the Empire readied for one final stand, and still, nothing. Minutes dragged like hours. And then, on the far side of the fleet, the human warship appeared. It rose from the black like a phantom scarred, dark, its hull marked by fire and battle. It moved with eerie calm, its engines barely glowing, its weapons silent but ready. There was no flag, no signal, no threat. But every alien on the command deck felt the cold grip of death tightening around their throats. The Emperor's hand unleashed everything: plasma beams, particle lances, starbreaker, missiles. The sky lit with fire, rivers of energy roaring toward the human ship. But the human warship moved faster than anything so large should be able to move. It slipped through the storm, dodging, weaving, its armor catching the light like black ice, and then it returned fire. The first shot shattered an Empire destroyer, ripping it in half. The second bored straight through a cruiser's shield, tearing it open like paper. The human ship didn't stop. It advanced, silent, cold, relentless. Reshkul shouted orders. Officers screamed. The obsidian weapons launched, but the humans kept coming. One Empire battleship detonated as human boarding teams tore through it from the inside. Another drifted dead, its engines gutted. The fleet's wall crumbled. The Emperor's hand stood alone. The human warship struck the flagship without warning, massive. Railguns hammering the shields, precision strikes slamming into key systems. Explosions tore through the lower decks. Fires raged. Alien soldiers died in twisted corridors filled with smoke and blood. On the command deck, Reshkul's world shook. The lights flickered. Alarms screamed. "We're losing power." Shields failing. Boarding parties incoming multiple decks. The human soldiers had come. They moved like ghosts through the corridors of the flagship, silent, fast, merciless. They used no words. They showed no hesitation. Alien defenders fell before them, shot down or cut apart in brutal close combat. There was no time to retreat. The humans pressed forward, step by step, toward the command center. Reshkul stood trembling, his breath ragged, his claws slick with sweat. He could hear the screams echoing through the walls. He could feel the end coming. A heavy blast door shuddered as human weapons pounded it. Last of the alien guards fired wildly, their hands shaking. And then the door gave way. The humans stepped through. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. Gunfire filled the air. The command deck drowned. In blood, Reshkul fell to his knees, his eyes wide, his breath stolen by terror. The last thing he saw, as the human soldier raised her weapon, was the cold glass of her helmet eyes, like steel staring back at him. Without mercy, the shot was clean. The flagship died in fire. Out in the black sky, the Empire's last ships watched. As the Emperor's hand exploded, its heart torn open, its pieces spinning into darkness. There was no time to save it. There was no force left to fight. The human warship drifted through the debris. Engines cold, weapons silent. The Empire was broken, and the humans were still not finished. The cold darkness stretched across the stars, quiet and endless. As the broken remains of the Empire's fleet drifted like dying embers in the void, fire still burned on shattered hulls, debris floated in slow circles, and the only sound left was the distant hum of engines pulling a wearing, hiding, afraid. The Empire, the mighty Empire that once ruled systems with an iron fist, was dying, and the humans, cold and silent, moved through the wreckage without stopping. No mercy, no words, no slowing down. The human warship glided between twisted metal bones, its black hull still gleaming beneath the dim starlight. It was damaged, scarred from battle after battle, but it moved like it was alive, sharp, patient, unstoppable. The last remaining Empire ships had pulled back toward the core worlds, gathering near the home system, the heart of their civilization. There, behind layers of defenses, ancient weapons, and planetary shields, they hoped to make their final stand, but deep inside every alien heart, they knew the truth. The end was coming. On the central homeworld, once the shining capital of an empire that spanned hundreds of systems, panic gripped every street. Every tower, every fortress, civilian transports clogged the skies, fleeing. In every direction, military vehicles rumbled through crowded cities, soldiers shouting orders no one obeyed. The faces of the people were pale, hopeless, their eyes wide with terror. They had seen the images: ships burning, colonies erased, the flagship destroyed, and above all, they knew the name whispered by survivors, humans in the Empire's high command tower. The last surviving warlords gathered in a circle. Their hands trembled, their voices were thin. They shouted over each other, fear making them blind. Some called for surrender. Others demanded the use of weapons forbidden even in the darkest wars of history. But none of it mattered, because already reports were flashing across every screen. The human warship had entered the system. "Hi, Commander Selleck." An old veteran with iron-gray scales and haunted eyes slammed his fist on the table. "We have one chance," he growled. "We throw everything. Every gun, every soldier, every defense grid. We hold the line. If they reach the planet, we are finished." The others said nothing. There were no better ideas. No other way. The last stand began. Across space, the Empire's remaining ships, what few still remained, formed a desperate wall around the homeworld. Station weapons powered up, planetary shields hummed, orbital cannons aimed at the black horizon. Soldiers stood on trembling legs, clutching their weapons, their eyes locked on the empty void, and then the human ship appeared. It rose from the black without sound, without signal, its engines burning faint blue against the darkness. Its hull, battered but still deadly, moved with slow, steady purpose. The Empire's guns opened fire immediately, streams of plasma, guided missiles, beams of searing energy. The sky lit with color, explosions tearing through the void. But the human warship weaved through the storm like a ghost. It dodged it, countered. Its weapons flashed once. Twice Empire ships exploded in fire, their debris raining down in silent death. Defensive platforms cracked. Orbital cannons failed. In minutes, the human ship broke through the first line. Panic surged through the Empire's last defenders. Orders shouted. Crews ran to their stations. More weapons fired. But nothing stopped the advance. The human ship kept moving closer, closer until its guns could strike the planetary shields. And then it fired. A single focused beam, massive. Silence slammed into the shield grid. The energy rippled across the atmosphere, shaking cities. Throwing transports from the sky, the shields held barely, but the message was clear. This was no longer a battle. This was an execution inside the human warship. The soldiers moved with mechanical calm. Their faces were cold, their hands steady. They loaded weapons, checked systems, prepared for the next assault. They didn't speak of victory. Didn't cheer for the destruction they caused. They moved because the mission wasn't finished. Because long ago someone had fired the first shot and the humans had come to answer it. One soldier, Her face lit by the cold glow of monitors, whispered softly, "End it." And the others nodded. On the planet below, fear had become madness. Crowds filled the streets, running in every direction. Leaders vanished into bunkers. Civilians screamed as the sky flashed with the light of dying ships. And still, the human warship circled above. Waiting, the Empire's last commanders gave the order. The ultimate weapon hidden for centuries, launched from the planet's surface, a world-breaker missile built to burn entire fleets. In one strike, its path arched through the atmosphere. Sensors locked on the human ship. Every eye turned upward. Every breath held. The missile struck. The explosion lit the sky. A fireball that spread across the stars. And for a brief moment just. One breath the defenders dared to hope. But then, from within the fading light, the human warship emerged. Damaged? Yes. Burning? Yes. But alive. Moving. Still hunting. The final scream of the Empire echoed across every channel. It's still alive. The humans returned fire. Orbital stations cracked open like eggs. Defense grids vanished in white-hot fire. The planetary shields failed in sections, then collapsed completely. Empire cities burned beneath the rain of molten metal and falling debris. The ground itself shook as the last of the space defenses were torn apart in the High Command Tower. Selleck stood alone, staring at the sky. His voice, once strong, was no more than a whisper. "We never understood," he said softly. "We thought they fought like us? We were wrong." The doors shattered behind him. The human soldiers entered. The last shot was quick. Clean, the homeworld fell in silence, and in the black sky above, the human warship drifted, scarred but undefeated. The last stand of the Empire was over, and still, the humans had not spoken a single word. The fires burned for days. Across the shattered Empire homeworld, entire cities lay in ruins, blackened metal, broken towers, streets buried beneath ash and silence. Smoke drifted into the poisoned sky, lit by the glow of dying machines, and collapsed. Defenses. The air was thick with the stench of melted steel and something far colder, the silence of total defeat. The humans had come. Now the war was over. There were no more battles to fight. No more soldiers to command. The once mighty empire whose fleets had ruled the stars, whose armies had crushed countless worlds, was gone. Burned, broken, erased, and through the blackness above, the human warship still drifted, scarred, battered, but alive. It circled the ruined world in eerie calm, its engines burning soft blue, its weapons cold. No more shots were fired. No more ships moved to resist. The work was finished, but the humans did not leave. Not yet. On the ruined surface, the few surviving aliens stumbled through the wreckage, their bodies weak, their eyes hollow. Some clutched wounded limbs, others dragged what little supplies they could carry, but none spoke of victory. There was no such thing now, the empire they had sworn to. Serve had vanished beneath the weight of their own arrogance. The Deathworlders had come, and nothing had survived their fury. High above, inside the human warship, the soldiers of Earth stood in silence. Their armor was scorched, their faces were hard, their eyes cold and distant. They didn't speak of glory. They didn't cheer. They moved through their final tasks like ghosts cleaning weapons, repairing systems, treating the wounded. One soldier, her face lit by the cold blue lights of the command deck, whispered softly as she watched the ruined world spin below, "It's done." Another voice, low and flat, answered, "No, not yet." For the humans, victory was never the goal, it was survival. It was the promise they had made to their own kind, the promise that no one, not ever again, would harm their people without paying a price so terrible. No words could describe it. The price had been paid. Every alien survivor left on the ruined world below carried the same image burned into their minds, the silent, endless advance of the human warship, the cold, unstoppable soldiers who moved without fear, without hesitation, without mercy. They would tell stories of this day if they survived long enough to speak. Stories of the Deathworlders, of the monsters in human skin who had come from a small, dangerous planet at the edge of the galaxy and brought an empire to its knees. And worse than the destruction was the silence. The humans had not broadcast their demands. They had not declared war in loud voices. They had not claimed new territory or forced surrender. They had come, they had struck, and they had left only ashes. There was no peace to sign, no ceasefire to negotiate, just silence. One alien elder, her scales dull with dust and soot, stood on a high cliff overlooking the ruins of the capital. Her eyes, once sharp, once proud, were empty as she whispered the words that others dared not say. We thought we understood war, but we never understood them. Her voice carried on the wind, though no one answered. Above, the human warship powered down its primary weapons. The engines shifted. Orders came through, come quiet, final. The humans were leaving not because they were defeated, but because the message was delivered. The last transmission from the human ship, carried on a low-band encrypted signal, was heard only by the highest surviving military channels across the former empire. The words were simple, cold, final. This is what happens when you harm Earth. And then, nothing. The human warship slipped back into the stars, its engines flaring once, then fading as it vanished into the black. It left no monuments, no markers, only ruin and memory. Only the echo of a war no one would forget. For generations, the story would live on. The story of how the humans, fragile, small, and few, had burned an empire to dust without flinching. Of how they had fought not for conquest, not for riches, but for vengeance born from loss so deep that even their own soldiers spoke of it only in whispers. The silence after war was worse than the war itself, and across the surviving fragments of the galaxy, the other empires, those who had watched from the shadows, who had whispered of joining the conflict, stood still in fear. They saw the ashes. No, they saw the burning cities. And they understood. Earth was not to be touched. Humanity was not to be threatened. And if ever again someone forgot that lesson, Destworlders would return. They would come without warning. They would come without mercy. And there would be silence once more.